Releasing in Australian cinemas on May the 1st is a documentary called Dale Frank, Nobody's Sweetie. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the writer-director of Dale Frank, Nobody's Sweetie, Jenny Hicks. Jenny, welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. It's nice to meet you.
Great to talk to you about Dale Frank, this documentary you made, the artist and the irascible sort of way that he that he acts and talks to people and so on. A really fascinating character. Tell me how it all started.
Well, it all started back in 2020 when or 2019, I was looking for a location for a short film that I was making, and I, one way or another, came across his house, and so I went to visit him and look at the house because I was looking for an old fort farmhouse with, a big staircase and whatnot. And of course, his house wasn't anything like a farmhouse, even though it was a two-story, squattocracy house, farmhouse. But so I didn't use his house. But then when my film came out, Dale read about it in the paper and he rang me up. He was quite cross because I hadn't used his house and I hadn't told him I wasn't going to use his house. And he sort of said, "Well, why don't we make a film together?" And I was sort of like, "Well, have you got any money?" And he said, "Oh, I don't know, maybe. Let's have a cup of tea." So I went around and had a cup of tea. I didn't know him. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know anything about him. And we sat around and had a cup of tea and got on like a house on fire and decided, like a couple of maniacs, to make a film together.
What
And
an
so I was all a bit, sort of rash, I suppose is the word. But anyway, it's been fun.
Well, what an
Mm.
interesting background, and I mean, and you've also been involved with so many films, etc., which I'll come back to a bit later. So, tell me about the arrangement you had with Dale about permissions, about what you can film, about the whole process.
Well, at the very beginning, he I wanted it to be a film about the artwork, but I said to him, "Look, it can't just be about you and your art, and it's boring, and you don't want it to be like a wanker, so we have to make you a human. We have to humanize the story. So we're going to have to talk a little bit about some personal stuff and make you, a character, make you, bring you alive as a character." And he's like, "Oh," he's a very private person.
Mm.
And so we sort of decided to keep the family out of it. Family didn't want to be part of it. Keep the sort of the family out of it. And I mean, that was just, in a casual conversation. And then whatever. But the thing was with Dale, we filmed over about 2 years, and COVID stop and stop and stop and start. And so, but as the months progressed and we'd come and we'd go, we did so many interviews with him. I think about 16 over the period of a couple of years. So we became friends, and as we became friends and the trust was there, we trusted each other. He trusted me. I was able to probe a little bit more into the neurodiversity story, which was unfolding at the time because he'd only just been diagnosed a couple of months before we started filming. So I thought, well, that's an interesting, journey, and his physical health. There's sort of these little things that we talked about, and he was cool with all of that. He's a very smart, switched on dude, but he didn't ever say what he wanted in the film or didn't want in the film or what the film was to be. He totally respected me as a filmmaker and my process. And I mean, he's a real artist's artist. He was very respectful. Never wanted to see anything. Never asked to see anything. He stood back, and right from the beginning, I'd said, "Look, if there's anything in this film at the end that you really don't want in there, then I will take it out. So don't worry about that. You've got my word there." And luckily, I produced it as well as directed it, so I didn't have anybody sort of saying, "Oh, you've got to put this in or keep that out or what have you." So I could hold my word. And at the end, when I was nearly finished, I showed it to him, and he had two minor, minor, minor changes, and that was it. So he was great. It was really good.
Oh, that is excellent to hear. I mean, his
Mm.
artwork is quite extraordinary. I have to say, his process, and being around to film all that and to make it look really stunning on screen.
Yeah.
Did you have a small crew working with you, or was it mainly you filming it all?
It was just me and one other, James Faulkner Marshall. James is a cinematographer, has been shooting documentaries forever. He's one of my dearest friends. He it was just he and I, and he also recorded sound. So the whole way through, it was just James and I. When I went to Melbourne to do some interviews, I used another camera person. And then the dinner party scene in the gallery, we had a second camera on that. But it was a very small team and very flexible. And James not only is he a great friend of mine, but I knew he'd get along with Dale, because Dale, he can be confronting sometimes if you haven't
Mm.
got a good sense of humor. And and I knew James is a very gentle, sweet soul, and that he would see the humor in Dale's hubris.
Yes, I'm always quite astounded with Dale's comments and his really powerful approaches to people at times. You know, they ask him a question, he'll just, "Why ask me that? What's that for? What's going on here?" And I'm not answering that or whatever, which I
Yeah,
found so interesting because he has the real artist temperament, if you like to put it
yeah.
that way, and you've captured that in the film.
I think it's the neurodiversity leans into that, but I think it's more his theatricality.
Mm.
I think he did say once he toyed with becoming an actor, as a young man, but he exaggerates out of this world. He is very larger than life, you know, rolling eyes, waving arms, carrying on. Oh my God, is his favorite expression. It's either he says no or he says, oh my God, and it's all a big drama and theatrical. And when he's notorious for his emails because he write, with all his gallerists, because he uses, capital letters a lot and exclamation marks and bold and underlining and like he's yelling in his emails, which, which, I find hilarious. But, so you get used to it. But
Yes,
just theater. It's a bit of drama and a bit of fun, and keep it lively. I think a lot of
absolutely.
that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely understand. He has such an interesting background, and you've captured that so much about his high school and his the way he developed as an artist and his going to Europe and all that sort of thing. You've got some great archival footage, photos, and so on. Were there any issues with getting all of that?
Well, not really. I mean, Dale has a great archive that he took himself very seriously as an artist from day one, and so he kept everything, and he recorded and photographed everything, and he doesn't have a lot of photos of himself, but he has every single piece of artwork is recorded in his archive. His archive is very important to him. This film becomes part of that archive. His we so I went into his little cottage and scanned and scanned and scanned and scanned, and then it was a matter of trying to get permission and stuff like that. The archive, that the moving picture archive, most of that's come from the big archive companies just to set the scene of the 80s and whatnot. But he had his own archive of the performance. That was his own stuff recorded on VHS. So it was a mixture of Dale's stuff. Rosalind gave us a few photos from her collection. She's also very keen on keeping archives. And, a lot of this is about the future, keeping it all together, recording everything, keeping it there for posterity and, Australian cultural, I don't know, records.
Mm.
Important for Dale. Dale's thinking about what the Dale Frank archives are going to be in 300 years. Like his garden. What's that going to be in 300 years? He thinks about the future a lot. Mm.
Yes. Oh, clearly. And I'm glad you mentioned the garden. I was going to ask you about that because it is that in itself is so fascinating. The way he looks after that, tends to it, gets the trees going, all that sort of thing. It's amazing.
Well, it's his biggest work of art, is what it is,
Mm.
really. I mean, the botanical garden, and it's growing exponentially. I was just up there for the garden open day last Sunday, and every time I go up there, there's a whole, another acre that's been done, and he's just been given a garden. Some chap in Geelong had a big botanic garden, and he was retiring or going off somewhere, and he was going to have to sell it, and they knew the developers were going to bulldoze everything, so he rang Dale up and said, quick, you have to take all my trees, and so he's just had this whole other thing. I think there's a lot of people who love rescuing trees, and everyone knows Dale will take them whether he can pay for them or not. He did something else, but at least he's got space for them, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's just so beautiful the way he's designed everything. And I sort of, when I go in the garden, I kind of, you close your eyes and look through your eyelashes and try to imagine, what this canopy is going to be like in 300 years. He has a forest of Moreton Bay figs. It's going to be a forest, one corner is this forest of Moreton Bay figs. I mean, they're only, probably 10 or not even 5 or 6 meters high now. They're babies. But, to try and imagine it's going to be a jungle. It's going to be this incredible jungle. So I think that's something that excites him the most right now. I mean, he's still painting and he's still serious about his art and developing his art. But a lot of the motivation to do the art and get the art and sell the art is to fund the garden.
Yes, yes. It looks quite stunning, and yeah, and of course we're talking about him being in New South Wales, so that's where
Correct.
he's based.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The other issue, of course, he faces is his health issues, and you bring that out about his pain management and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, that's ongoing.
yeah.
And he's just had last year he had double knee replacement,
Ah,
which he's still kind of hobbling around a little bit after that. Refused to go to rehab, just came home and got on with it, with his legs swollen up like this. But he's got ongoing health things, but he is now taking a little bit more care of himself and um, you know, wouldn't say he was eating properly or doing anything like that, or he hasn't given up smoking or drinking, but he does go to the doctor now, if there's a
ah.
problem. So yeah, yeah.
That's good to hear. Now, another fascinating part of the documentary, of course, is the exhibition that he is preparing for, and you spend a
Mhm.
fair bit of time in the film presenting that and how he's preparing and so on, with the 6 months later that comes into the film. So again, that commitment to all of that filming from you and James and so on, that's quite extraordinary.
Yes, well, it is. There's two things that sort of makes me think about it. It was important to me to show a little bit about the business side of the film industry, business side of being an artist and the art world, because when I first met Dale, I was astounded that there was this man who he's an artist, a painter, a sculptor, and he earns a living in Australia,
Hmm.
a good living as an artist, and it blew me away because I didn't know much about the art world. And I was like, well, how did he do that? And I mean, I know some artists, but they're all, the typical starving artist types.
Yeah.
And anyhow, so I was very interested in the business side and following that a little bit through the film, so that's where I brought Rosalind in, because Rosalind Oxley, because she's a great, one of Australia's top gallerists, and their relationship and how they get ready and how they have the exhibition, what exhibitions mean, and that sort of thing. I followed, that was one of the themes through the film, which interested me greatly. And of course, that opened up a whole other world. But yes, we kept filming. And, once, I mean, I'm a bit of a dog with a bone, really. I mean, once you get in and get going, even with COVID and all the things that happened, and getting money and running out of money, and then getting more and running out of money. I mean, it was very difficult to finance because, it's not necessarily a commercial film.
Hmm.
Um, a film about an artist in Australia. They're not a commercial proposition as such, so it was tough to get the money. Um, but yeah, we hung in there, and we're still filming because uh he's he's got himself a taxidermied African elephant,
Ah,
which is the only one in Australia. It's huge, beautiful, big elephant, and he's like, "Oh, well, we've got to film the elephant," and so I'm like, "Oh, but I'm not. No, the film's finished. The film's finished. No, but we've got to film it anyway." So currently we're filming the taxidermist, doing this elephant, and we're making a little, I don't know, I don't know. We're recording it for the record. That's what we're doing about this
okay.
elephant. Yeah,
Could turn up when you release the DVD on additional
exactly.
material
It'll
and
be the
so on.
elephant film. I know, but we enjoy it, and now it's fun because Dale and I are great friends, and we will be forever. And James as well, the cameraman, is a great friend. So we have a ball now. At the beginning, when we first started filming with Dale, every time we turned the camera on, he'd run out of the room. Literally, he would, we put the camera on him, and he would just sort of turn around and disappear, and it was impossible. The interviews were impossible. Now it's like, well, why don't you film this and film that? And he just loves it. It's great.
How interesting to hear all that. Yes, he's a really fascinating character. And I must also ask you about the music that you've used in the film.
Yeah.
It's quite evocative and fits the tone of the his story.
Well, I think the music came from the idea is I would every time I was driving to work, I listened to classic ABC Classic FM, and I'd hear these pieces of music on the radio, and they would they had this bold kind of irreverent feeling about them, classical pieces, and I go, oh my God, that's so Dale, and
Mm,
I'd find out and write down what the song was, and so I started in the edit putting in some of these famous classical pieces, and because I wanted the film to match his energy. Like the film is very intense. I mean,
mm,
watching it now, it's exhausting for me to watch it again because there's so much going on. It's so fast, it's frenetic, it's intense, and that's stale. That is, I wanted the film to reflect his energy
mm,
and music to reflect that energy and the bombacity, with which he conducts you know, his world. And so that's where the music came in. And then when I got a composer on, I said, well, this is the kind of things we've got to make the music work with these pieces of popular classical music that I got, which luckily were mostly in sound libraries, so they didn't cost too much. But yeah, the whole thing was trying to sort of match his personality. And when you see him marching through the house, roaring at this, that, and the other, you can hear the trumpets and the cymbals and the yeah. Anyway.
Absolutely. No, that works so well. Well, speaking of editing, I know you have a strong editing background, but tell me about the challenges you had in editing the film.
Oh, lots, lots. And the biggest problem was me, um, because what happened was I had being an editor, I'm very well connected with all the great editors, and so I had a woman starting. Oh, a couple of years ago, she started editing, but at the same time, I lost my producer, so I then had to turn my attention to doing some producing. So I wasn't there as a director. So she was just sort of looking at stuff and researching, going through all the material and making notes and thinking. And I was off running around trying to raise money and do something else. And so we didn't get much done. And then I ran out of money. So then she had left and put down tools, and then she went off and did another job, and then I got another editor on when I got some money, and he had a crack at it, and we did mostly with Scott. I said we're going to start with Dale's emotional journey. We'll start with his, there's the story of him discovering that he is neurodiverse, and how that pans out over the years of him working out what that even means, and how he feels at the end. And then there's a story of his illness, and then we'll do that's one story, and we'll do that, and then the story of getting to Rosalind's show. So he did that, but then we ran out of money, so we never got to put the art in. So then I had another editor come on, who's really great. And but at that point, we were trying to go for the Sydney Film Festival, and the film was like 3 hours long. So I said, we've just got to get this film down, cut it down to sort of short because we got to show it the film festival or something. So then she did that and crunched it right down. And then I jumped on, and every time I jumped on board, it would just get longer and longer, you know. So it was just because I just wanted everything in there. And then in the end, I took over and I managed to get most of the art. You know how we go to the 70s and the 80s
Yep.
and the 90s, and we talk and we were showing the art along the way. I put all that in as the next layer. There's a lot of layers. So it was painstaking. It was over a couple of years. I don't know how many weeks we ended up in the edit, but it was a lot. And that was the most difficult and most expensive for sure side of the whole thing. So, but you know, it's still, I feel it's a bit long, but I take full responsibility for that because I just couldn't. I mean, it could have been a mini series. Dale
Yeah.
wanted a mini series. At one point, it was 6 hours, and I was like, oh, I was in tears and, you know, having my 19th nervous breakdown over the whole thing. And Dale would be like, 6 hours is fine. We can do 6 hours. I'm like, no, Dale, you don't understand. Nobody will watch it if it's 6 hours long. You know,
Wow, what a process. That is
it
incredible.
was. Oh, I still haven't recovered.
What made you decide to call it Dale Frank Nobody's Sweetie? Great title.
Nobody's Sweetie, great title. That comes from the editor Andrea Lang. Nobody's Sweetie was the name of one of his shows at Rosalind Oxley Gallery. It was the name of a show in the 80s, I think, or the 90s. And Andrea was just looking through some archive and stuff like that. And she goes, "Oh, Nobody's Sweetie. Oh, that would be a great name for the film." And I'm like, "Bing, you're right." So yeah. Dale
Well,
hated it to start with. I had to really talk him around on that, but
how
it is
interesting.
very true. Mm,
Ah,
mm.
how great. So, how did he react when he saw the final cut of the film?
Well, I don't know because I sent it to him to watch at home, on his computer where he's safe and alone and quiet. And I think he watched it about 10 times. He didn't really give an opinion, other than to say, you know, can you get rid of that double chin shot and can we not mention so and so? And those were the two changes. But for me, him not having a problem with it was enough. And then after we went, we sort of showed the film first time publicly at the Sydney Film Festival, and he came down for that, which was very hard for him to do. And that was the first public screening. That was absolutely terrifying. And then after that, he sent me an email and he said, "You've done a good job."
That's good to
So,
hear.
and I thought, I have done a good job. He comes out smelling like roses. And also, you know, a lot of people have seen the film since, you know, that new Dale back in the 80s and the 90s, you know, arts critics and journalists and people who didn't like him. They thought he was really arrogant and really, you know, all these things because of his attitude and he was very he just backed himself in a big way, and people did think he was a bit of an upstart. But when they saw the film and they realized the whole neurodiversity angle, they're like, ah, now I know why you know, he's ranting and raving all the time and you know, and being obstreperous. And so I think it's people who have known him for a long time and always found him difficult have now, you know, they see that he's not really difficult. He's just complicated.
Yes. And nobody's sweetie. So,
And nobody's sweetie. He's very brave. I mean, that's the thing that got me about him. He's the bravest. He's a very brave person as an
mm,
artist. It's
yes.
hard to be an artist, and he's just put it before everything. He's put it as his number one thing in life. He's worked hard. He's so dedicated and determined and driven. He's insecure. He's as insecure as any of us. I mean, he's very insecure. He never thinks his work's good enough. He's always blaming himself, but he does it anyway. And I found that so inspiring, you know,
Mm,
as an artist, that you just doesn't matter how bad you feel about yourself or your work or whatever, you just got to do it just do it. just do it. And he's brave like that, and he's shy and all these things, and he does it. He's very courageous, and I've found that to be very inspiring for myself.
And you've
Mm.
certainly captured that in the film. So congratulations. It's
Oh,
really a remarkable documentary, and it's great that it's getting a release. So
oh,
that's always an issue, isn't it? Getting a film out there.
yeah, yeah. Well, it is. It really is. So Umbrella came on board straight away. Actually, no, that's not true. I did have to do a bit of a. I had to keep sending them stuff, but eventually they've come on board. So we did have the distributor. So it is going to be seen. It's been at Sydney Film Festival and Melbourne and one in Western Australia. But it'll be interesting to see if we can get people into the commercial art house cinemas,
Mm.
and I'm not sure how that's going to go. Hopefully, I will get a bit of publicity and stuff like that, and get people in there to see it. Because, of course, all films, being a filmmaker, I think all films should be seen on the big screen. Um, and yeah, let's see how it goes. It's exciting and scary, and you know.
Yeah, but
You
great
do
to
want people
see.
to see it. I mean, that's the whole point,
Yeah.
isn't it? Like, so it will end up on a streaming service somewhere, or video on demand and all that. I'm sure Umbrella's got a plan, and it's great of them to support as an Australian film about Australian artists. It's as an Australian distribution company, it's really important. I tell you, the ABC didn't want to know about it,
Ah,
and that really made me cross. So I'll say that out loud,
yes.
because it's some. I would have thought it'd be part of their remit to be,
Mm.
supporting Australian films about Australian artists and stuff like that. So I mean, this film I think, should be at art schools and inspiring young people to,
Yep.
follow their dreams and be brave. And it's a great film for young creatives. My nephew, who wants to be an artist, he came flouncing out of the cinema going, oh, I'm going to be an artist, and that was such a joy for me, to see young people go, you can do it, you can do it.
Yes. Oh, very inspiring. And yes, I fully agree with you. And I'm astounded about ABC and SBS as well that they don't pick up films like yours. It's just crazy.
Considering the amount of English, and American content that they buy in, and it's
Mm.
infuriating. I know they're broke, and I know that, they've been plundered, but it is. I was disappointed because, of course, it's free to air, and that's a good thing. But
Yes.
anyway, I haven't given up there. I was going to write Kim Williams an outraged letter.
Signed Dale Frank. Right.
Signed out break, exactly. Yes, that's a good idea.
Yeah. I like it. I like it. Look, we've just about run out of time, but I wanted to ask you about your editing background. You've been involved in the industry for quite a while. I notice you've worked on Ma The Matrix and Matrix Reloaded and Emu Runner and so many other productions. What was
Yeah.
it that inspired you to get involved in the film industry in the first place?
Look, I was always interested in photography, um, at school, and did photography and whatnot. And then when I left school, it was the early 1980s, and I was a bit of a slacker. I didn't want to go to university. I traveled a bit, and then when I was back in Sydney, it was beginning of the boom time for the Australian film industry, and 10BA was going on in the 80s. There was a lot of work in the film industry, well paid work for unskilled people who, like myself, who could learn it as a trade. And for me, I just fell into it because it was well paid, and I could learn as an assistant editor. I did my first job for free, and then I, learned how to do it, how to be useful, how to get paid, stuff like that. And so throughout the whole 80s, we all learned how to become filmmakers
Hmm.
through the whole 10BA. Wonderful years they were for Australian cinema. And then, as I was getting involved in the learning how to tell stories, with images and sound, I really just fell in love with it then. to telling stories and using the medium, most fabulous medium in the world to tell stories. And I learned about it then. And then I went to UCLA in America and I just started learning. I always wanted to be a director, but I never had the confidence. So I was always more in the post-production side of things, which is a great way to learn, how to do it. And I was very privileged that because I was an assistant editor for a very long time, I got to work on, with the greats. I became very good at it, and I was working a lot with the Americans on a lot of great movies with great directors and great cinematographers and great storytellers, and I learned a lot. I was very privileged there. And then when I did step out, I finally got the confidence to step out and start editing myself. Um, it was when I was living in South Africa, actually. So I was making a lot of South African films. And I mean, as you know, as with anything, the more you know about it, the more fascinating it becomes, and the more you know that there's things to learn. But it's what's hard for me now that I'm moving into directing. I've got all these not highfalutin ideas, but I was taught by the greats, and so I think big, and that's very difficult in Australia to think big because we don't have the budgets.
Yeah. No.
So anyhow, I'm
Yeah.
creeping towards it. Yeah, I
Oh,
want to go back to fiction. I want to. My next project will be a fiction drama.
I was going to ask you what your next project is.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think. Well, I mean, I went to film school and did the masters in directing and drama, and then I was going to sort of do. I have got a couple of script ideas. I was going to do that, and then Dale sort of came in and sideswiped me, and I recklessly said, "Okay, I'll make a documentary," and not having really known much about what I was getting myself into. So I think this will possibly be my first and last feature documentary. I say that now because I'm still, I mean, it's not financially sustainable.
Mm.
Um, and so I do have some ideas for feature films and TV series of that I want to write and direct. So that's another journey that I will undertake as soon as I get some money. I've got to go back to editing now and
Ah,
get some get some money together so I can stop and write. It's so hard in Australia because there's so little development money. It's very
yeah.
difficult to get paid to write. And at least, until you're already well known as a writer. So it's that whole thing with the film as a creative, it's a tough gig in Australia, getting
Yep.
things in development and getting them up and running. But
Yes.
we have to do it because well, it's getting our culture, Australian culture, recorded and written and talked about and put on the screens and written in books. I mean, that's a real challenge in the global marketplace, and we don't really get a heck of a lot of support from anywhere, really.
No.
Um,
Yeah, that is very sad. And but keep on pushing and doing.
Oh,
And
look, we don't, well, we get support from people like you, which is good, which is good. Yes,
yeah.
no, it's just so fun and it's so challenging. And with cinema, the media of the imagery, adding as a storytelling device, and the sound as a storytelling device, and the music as a storytelling device, and the actors, there's got so many different ways to tell a story, and you put them all together. That's with all these creative people that are doing, and the costumes, you're telling a story with the costumes and the makeup and the putting all that great collaboration of all those ideas in to tell with one vision. That to me is the ultimate of excitement in storytelling. That's what it's about.
Great comment and summation. I like that very much. We've been speaking to writer-director Jenny Hicks for her documentary Dale Frank, Nobody's Sweetie, on release in Australian cinemas on the 1st of May. Look out for it. It's definitely a film worth seeing. And Jenny, it's a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Well, Peter, thank you so much. It's absolutely delightful to talk with you. Thank you.
Okay. All the best.
All right,
Bye-bye.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
How do I leave? Oh, here. Pink.